Yo, Luke.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can definitely hear you.
I think we've spoken before, haven't we?
Yes, definitely.
I don't
I
remember.
am
Yes.
currently, yes, I'm currently doing recording of the 12 Anathemas, the explanation of the 12 Anathemas by Cyril of Alexandria. It's just going on in the background, so if you hear that, I'm sorry about it.
That's all right. Well, I'll give
But
you.
yes, one thing you brought up that's interesting is you said like women have to be veiled all the time, including after the church. I'm
So,
pretty sure that is something that you do actually need to enforce, but I probably need to continue asking the other priests about this.
yes, and it's a full covering. When they say veiling, like Paul says a woman should be veiled, and he uses a Greek word, kata, it just means a veil coming down. But he doesn't even just say that her head should be covered. Sometimes he says the woman should be covered in a few verses. So he's really talking about her entire body, the whole woman being veiled. And when you hear the church fathers talking about it, they say, yeah, catacalypto just means coming down. It means from top to bottom. She's supposed to be invisible.
Right, you can't have like short skirts, that's definitely banned. You also can't have like long sleeves as well, that's also banned as well.
Yeah, and I don't.
That's something.
Wait, it's banned?
Yes, you can't have like long sleeves. I'm pretty sure it's in the canons. You can't have like you can't wear shorts. That's also forbidden by the canons.
A woman can't
Like
have
if you're
long
a
sleeves?
Yes, I'm pretty sure you can't have like I don't think you can have like short sleeves usually.
What? You're telling me that's in an Orthodox book like the Rudder or something?
I have to double check, but I know for certain you can't have like short pants. That's like completely banned. And I think for sleeves as well, you also can't have them short as well. Because remember with pants, if you're a male, you also can't have you can't wear shorts. That's also forbidden.
Hmm.
Shorts are forbidden as well.
Wow.
You need
I
like long pants when you're entering the church.
I have never heard that before. That is absolutely shocking if that is true, what you're telling me. That is mind blowing and that is absolutely disgusting, sinister to forbid women to cover themselves completely. Who's demanding to see them? I demand that you show me yourself. Let me see your skin.
There's also some very weird things going on. Like for example, there's people who like to do barbecues outside their monastery in World Orthodoxy. I think that's also not allowed by the canons. You can't have like that barbecues, just like roasting outside the church.
Well,
Have
I
you
go
seen that before?
I go to the early church's teaching, and that's the only thing I'm looking at. Is somebody might ask, what's the cutoff date? Where do you stop saying, oh, this is a church father, that's not a church father? And just so you know, I don't do that. None of
Oh,
my
that
friends do that.
canon doesn't apply anymore,
Yeah,
you know?
what I
Because
believe.
I know there's some people, there's like priests who will be like, yeah, it's okay for me to go and visit horse races, right?
Hmm.
The canons like literally say you shouldn't go to horse races because it like promotes vanity and it promotes like animal cruelty and for the sake of entertainment basically. And when I pointed this out to someone, they were saying, "Oh, you're being too strict and rigorous." But no, that's in the canons. You can't do that. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to do things like go to theaters or go to brothels. You can't like do.
Certainly, but I feel like I am going to a brothel if I go to an Orthodox church or any church because the women are dressed so outrageously. And it's not that they're in a hospital, like the other person said, that they're
Yes,
receiving
no.
treatment. They're
If
not.
they're like not veiling, that's also like really bad as well. Yeah.
Nobody's rebuking them. Nobody's saying that is not how Christian women act. They are fine with it. They actually tell them that it's modest to go from skinny jeans to a dress that is above the knee. There's like this idea like, oh, just wearing some loose clothing around your waist is modest. But if you have a short dress, that's worse than wearing skinny jeans. They have no concept of modesty in these churches. And the priests are wearing.
Yes, no. You also can't because this is the thing. Like if you have like tight clothes and it's like showing your chest and you're a woman, that's also not good as well.
Yeah, the early church would just spit upon the standards of
You'll
modesty
get,
people have.
dude, you'll get if I'm not mistaken, if you lived in the 1800s, they had these paddles, and if you were like looking in front, they'd probably like come in and whack you behind. I'm not joking.
Well, I sent you an article. By the way, how old are you, Mr. T. Cross?
Oh, I'm currently, yeah, I'm around my 20s.
I
But
see.
yes, I'm just asking more questions. I know for certain you cannot have tight dresses in church. Like that is fully banned by the canons. You cannot enter a church like that. You also cannot enter a church without veil. That's also banned by the canons
But
as
what is
well.
a veil? I mean, they if you redefine the veil, then you say you do have to wear something that the church would never even consider to be a veil, then you're not teaching veiling. It has to be their definition of a veil for it to really be the doctrine of veiling. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yes, that would be the case.
And here, I'll share screens for you, and you tell me what you think their definition is. Let's see what the universal teaching of the church is.
Forehead, and her head was covered by a hood.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Now, I
But I
put
think it goes where when you're doing the veil, you cannot show hair at all. Like the hair cannot be seen.
it's not true. Look at this example right here. It says veiled up to her forehead and her head was covered with a veil, and it even says um it even says a little bit earlier in this exact, or no, one sentence later in this very section, it says that she had white hair. He could see her hair. I made a little picture here. See this picture? Some
Let me
veils
take a look.
some veils look like this, where you can actually see the person's hair. The idea that hair needs to be covered is a modern teaching. That's something that took many centuries to develop, that hair needs to be covered. It is not an early church teaching. It is not a Jewish teaching. It is not a teaching found anywhere in the world until centuries went by. The first time I can hear anybody talking about veiling the hair is in the late 400s. But what the church fathers say is that the whole body needs to be covered and that hair is a natural veil. Since it's a natural veil, you don't need to cover hair. That makes no sense. That's like covering the veil. I'm going to put a veil on my veil. No, the hair would only need to be covered if it was fancy, if it was all done up and made to be poofy and ridiculous, if it was drawing attention and inciting people to lust, then you would need to cover it. But you do not need to cover hair. The church fathers' emphasis is the face. And the reason why I put this quote here, even though it's not really much of a teaching in Shepherd of Hermas, is not going in depth like the fathers do. He says she's veiled up to her forehead. I put an illustration here, and it says, and her head was covered with a hood. So it's two separate pieces of a veil for the front and the back. And then Irenaeus says, and I just want to point out, guys, that they didn't consider a hood to be a veil. Something on the back of the head is not a
Right.
sufficient veil. It's the front part that's the veil, which they call a kaluma. Anyway, Irenaeus says, in the same epistle, when Paul says a woman ought to have a veil upon her head because of the angels, Moses rendered manifest when he put a veil upon his face. So he equates a face veil with the veil Paul commanded them to wear. Here's Clement of Alexandria. He says, let the woman observe this. By the way, this is called a short preview because these are just tiny snippets I took. If you want the real quotes that are much longer, you get to this section. Much longer quotes in full context. Huge quotes, you see? Much longer. So nobody can say, oh, we're taking it out of context. Look at this context for Chrysostom. It's not out of context. Anyway, so back up to the top, which is where we're doing a short preview. Clement says, let the woman observe this further. Let her be entirely covered, unless she happen to be at home. You see the emphasis? It's about being in public. That's why you veil. Nor will she invite another to fall into sin by uncovering her face. He says again, it is
I think
also...
that's interesting because I am pretty sure that in public you do also need a cover as well. I am pretty sure that is something I've heard.
Yes, but what do the
That,
Orthodox
like
and
if you're in
Catholics say?
public.
They say veiling is about prayer. They even call it a prayer veil. I want you to look at all the quotes I'm about to post for you. Tell me if you hear any of them talking about putting this on for prayer. None of them think it has
I
anything
don't
to
think
do with
it's
prayer.
just prayer. I am pretty sure it's not just prayer. It is like if you're in public, you do actually have to cover because it's like, why are you showing yourself off to other people? It makes no sense.
It has everything to do with protecting others from lusting and about being under the authority of a husband. It has zilch to do with prayer, nothing to do with prayer. That is from a misunderstanding, some modern misunderstanding of when Paul says, if a woman prays to God unveiled, then she disgraces her head. But Paul is not saying put on a veil at the time of prayer. He's not saying show up to church without a veil and then just put it on at the time of prayer. No, the church fathers all say that the women who were normally always veiled, even pagans were always veiled, they were showing up to church, and when they were praying and prophesying, they were taking off the veil. And Paul is simply saying, do not take off your veil at the time of prayer. Keep it on. He's not saying it's only for the time of prayer, but look how perverted they are. They've completely forgotten this doctrine. Yes, he says, nor will she invite another to fall into sin by uncovering her face. So what's the danger here, Mr. T? What do you see as the danger? What's the whole point of the veil? Causing people to lust. That's what it's about. He says it's also been enjoined or commanded that the head should be veiled and the face covered, for it is a wicked thing for beauty to be a snare to men, a trap to men. What do you think about that?
That's interesting. I do wonder what the because it's
Oh, I'm sorry, you cut out. What'd
I
you
mean
say?
like uh it says like something about a face veil. Does that mean they're like wearing some sort of like mask or whatever? Is that what you're like trying to imply here?
Yeah, there were different kinds of veils. Some of them were a separate cloth, like you see. I posted one here, like a kaluma cloth. This is the word that is being used by the church fathers almost all the time. Kaluma, like if you look it up, it says a veil, a cover, and it's especially a face veil. It's what Moses put over his face. Anyway, going back over here. Yes,
that would make sense because back then they would have like
and we can prove that all the Greeks were wearing this. All Greek women veiled the face. That's it's a bunch of different points. Let me show you something real quick before I move on. I'm making a little article here. I'm making a little presentation, but there are 15 reasons why this is definitely a face veil. First of all, the word katakalipto, that's the Greek word Paul uses, it means completely covered. That is the definition of that word. I'm making a little presentation here, as you can see. But it means completely covered. This is the word used when the Ark of the Covenant was commanded by God to be veiled. He didn't say any part of that thing could be revealed, and everybody knows that. They all know that the whole thing is veiled and made invisible. That's the point. And so they hear that the same thing with a woman. He says, hey, make her head kata-kalyptoed. And they say, that means it's visible, right? We can see that head? But no, it's invisible. So that's the first point. Secondly, in the Old Testament, all the righteous women veiled their faces. Did you know that? Have you read the Old Testament yet?
Wouldn't shock me, yes. I've read through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, and also I'm getting through Judges. I'm nearly done with Judges.
Well, in the Old Testament, it's everywhere. For instance, in Genesis, when Isaac is about to get married, a girl comes out of her father's house, and she's going to go see her new husband. She's going to marry him. And as she's on her way on the back of a donkey, she says to the servant, this is a very old man, over 100 years old, who had her, so she wasn't veiled around him, but she is veiled around younger men. She says to the servant, who is the man who's walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself. All the church fathers know that this Greek word here, theristron, means a complete covering. It's over the face. She didn't put something on the back of her head here. Again, in Genesis, it talks about Tamar, who is a relative of Abraham. So it runs in the family, clearly. It says she took off the garments of her widowhood and she covered herself with her veil. And so in this scene, she pretends to be a harlot in this scene. But anyway, it says she covered her face and he knew her not. It says Judah saw her and he thought her to be a harlot, for she covered her face and he knew her not. So he can see the makeup on her eyes, but her face is covered. That's what this veil is, theristron. You see? It's veiled. Same word Paul uses, kata-kalypto. It's a face covering. And then here in Numbers, all the women in Israel were veiled. God had a law that if a wife was ever accused of adultery, then the priest shall cause the woman to stand before the Lord, and he shall uncover the head of the woman. This is the word for unveil. So all women were wearing veils. And we have many Jews commentating on this. They all say this is a face veil. For instance, like if you're wondering, here's Philo. A quick digression. he talks about this verse where it says the priest shall take, he shall take away from the woman her headdress on her head, so that she may be judged with her head bare and deprived of the symbol of modesty, which all those women are accustomed to wear, who are completely blameless. But if she be convicted by her own conscience, let her cover her face, making her modesty the veil for her iniquities. For to persist in her impudence is the very extravagance of wickedness. So this is a face veil. Absolutely a face veil. And I have many quotes from the Jews talking about the veiling of women. But anyway, so just, in all these verses in the Old Testament, this is one of the points.
We'll definitely share these with you know, just to see what's going on. But I am more on the side of like, yeah, you definitely need to cover up when you're in public.
Yes. Well, I mean, look at all these. Cataclipto means hidden. All righteous women in the Old Testament veiled their faces. Jewish tradition agrees that it's a face veil. All the church fathers say it's a face veil. All the Greeks who Paul was writing to in the Greek language already veiled their face. Paul appeals to nature as a reason for veiling. So again, this has nothing to do with prayer. You don't put something on your head to pray as a law of nature. There are many reasons here. I have 15. But yeah, Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria, Tertullian, he says, God bids you be veiled. I believe he does so, for fear the heads of some should be seen. So perilous a face, then, ought to be hidden, for who will have the audacity to intrude with his eyes upon a shrouded face? Origen, in his commentary on the Song of Solomon, he talks in the voice of the bridegroom who represents Christ, and the bride who represents the church. But he says the bridegroom asks her, when she comes to that place which he's just specified as being more secluded, to lay aside her veil and show her face to him. She walks thus veiled and covered, however, because she ought to have a power over her head because of the angels. So he's quoting Paul in 1 Corinthians. He says that the woman says to her husband, I show not my naked face to any save you only. Hippolytus talks about the face veil. All of them do. He says, let all the women have their heads covered with an opaque cloth. That just means you cannot see through it. Not with a veil of thin linen, for this is not a true covering. You see how they're all about a true covering, not a fake covering? Some women who would dress modestly had to be rebuked if they were immodest. Hippolytus says, commentating on the story of Susanna, do you know that story, Mr. T?
Story of Susanna.
In Daniel.
In Daniel. I haven't gone into Daniel.
Okay,
yet,
basically, here's the story. There are these two Jewish elders, they're elders over Israel, and they see a woman bathing, and they go lust after her, and they say, commit adultery with us, or we'll accuse you of having committed adultery with us. And she refuses, so they tell everybody, hey, we caught this woman committing adultery, and so they accuse her, and they bring her to the judgment seat. And in the scriptures, in Daniel, guys, it says, and the lawless ones commanded her to be unveiled, for she was veiled, in order that they might be filled with her beauty. So when she showed up, she had a veil on, and it's obviously a face veil. And then Hippolytus says, let us consider, beloved, of what evil this action was. For while the apostle Paul says a woman ought to have a veil upon her head on account of the angels, these men did the opposite. They commanded that she be unveiled in front of the people, and at this they were not ashamed. So he considers.
Oh, that's interesting. That is very interesting.
Here's ordinances of the apostles as well. This is similar to apostolic constitutions, but ordinances it's a shorter version of apostolic constitutions that they date to sometime in the 200s, and it does not have the 85 canons at the end. But it is pretty much word for word the same as apostolic constitutions in the first 5 books. So it says to the women, and when you walk in the street, oh, by the way, here, let me zoom in so you can read this. It might be too small for you. Okay, and when you walk in the street, cover your head with your robe, that by reason of your veil, your great beauty may be hidden. You guys see how this is about hiding beauty? And adorn not your natural face, but walk with downcast looks, being veiled. Cover your face from strange men with a veil of modesty. For it behooves women by a veil of modesty and humility to show their fear of God, for the conversion and the increase of faith of them that are on the outside, both of men and women. So again, this is a face veil. Cover your face from strange men with a veil of modesty. Apostolic Constitution says the same thing. And when you're in the streets, cover your head, for by such a covering you will avoid being viewed by idle persons. Look downward when you walk abroad, veiling yourself as becomes women. She is to veil her face and conceal it with modesty from strange men. Athanasius says the same. This is a book he wrote on, it was a Discourse on Salvation to a Virgin. They say this is pseudo-Athanasius. They're not sure if he wrote it, but I have two from him just in case. He says, if you should by chance meet someone, let your face be veiled, covered up, bent down, and do not lift your face toward a person, but only toward your God. This is a book where he writes on virginity. He says Mary veiled her face. He says Mary was therefore a pure virgin. She did not desire to be seen by men. Instead, she remained diligently at home, living a life of seclusion like a honeybee. She left no part of her body uncovered. So again, if he gives the advice that a virgin should veil her face, and then he says, oh, and Mary was a chaste virgin, well, that means she veiled her face. Absolutely. He wouldn't say that she was less modest than all the other virgins in the church. By the way, we know all Jewish women, all Jewish virgins and married women veiled the face. So here's Zeno. This is a disciple of Athanasius. He says the same thing about that story of Judah and Tamar. He says, when Judah saw the woman, he thought she was a prostitute, even though she had covered her face, thereby actually signaling the integrity of her chastity. She veils her face so as not to be recognized. Again, these are just short snippets because it would take too long to read so many church fathers talking about veiling. John Chrysostom says, Paul, however, requires something more of women, that they adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness. But what is this modest apparel? Such attire as covers them completely. He signifies that not at the time of prayer only, but also continually she ought to be covered. For he said not merely covered, but covered over. That's that word katakalipto in the Greek, meaning that she be carefully wrapped up on every side. Do the Catholics and Orthodox practice this, Mr. T?
Not that I can see, no.
I've never seen a church with them doing this. Look at this. We're almost in the 400s, and they're still practicing this. This is how long this tradition lasted. Ambrose says, was it a small sign of modesty that when Rebekah came to wed Isaac and saw her bridegroom, she took a veil that she might not be seen before they were united? And then in a separate book, he says, let custom itself teach us. A woman covers her face with a veil for this reason, that in public her modesty may be safe. But if she cover her head with a veil, that she may not accidentally see or be seen, for when the head is veiled, the face is hidden, how much more ought she to cover herself with the veil of modesty, so as even in public to have her own secret place? This is so explicit. You would think I came up with this from ChatGPT or something. It's so outrageously clear. But guys, this is not a ChatGPT quote. These are all real quotes. This is an actual book written by Ambrose. 2 books concerning repentance, chapter 14. Go look it up. He says all of this word for word. Here is Gregory of Nazianzus in one of his letters to a married woman who was asking for advice on how to live righteously. He says, adorn your head by covering it, adorn your brow by keeping it restrained, adorn your eyes by bowing them down and glancing about with decency, and your whole face with the hue of shame. So he's very similar to Athanasius here. And then he talks about his sister. This is a speech he gave at the funeral of his sister, who's very righteous. So he sings her praises, and he says, who was more deserving of renown, and yet who avoided it so much, and made herself inaccessible to the eyes of man? Listen, you women addicted to ease and display, who despise the veil of shamefastness. So they always call it the veil of shame. Interesting, huh? Because shame is something, when you're ashamed, you cover yourself, you hide. So they always call it the veil of shame because it's what a woman does. She hides herself. She acts ashamed. Even if she hasn't committed any sin, she still hides herself. And these are some quotes where it's very clear, whenever they're talking about a veil, they know that it's something that covers the face. They cannot conceive of anything other than a face veil. If they're using the word veil, they are assuming that it's a face veil. Cyril says, the veiling of your face is to foster recollection, lest a roving eye make your heart also stray. But the veiling of the eyes does not hinder the ears from receiving instruction. They use metaphors like, grant now that your soul's face unveiled with a clear conscience, blah, blah, blah. It's a face veil. That's the only kind of veil they know about. Here's Basil. He says, dissolute women, having forgotten the fear of God and scorned the eternal fire, have cast off the yoke of Christ's bondage. Do you know what a yoke is, T? A yoke is like that big heavy thing they put on 2 animals like oxen or horses if they're pulling a plow, something big and heavy. So he's saying this is the yoke of women. God has given them a yoke. He says the yoke of Christ's bondage is having a veil. They have thrown off the veils of modesty from their heads, despised God, and disregarded his angels. They have shamelessly exposed themselves to the eyes of men. So he's saying they were hidden before. Notice how they're always using these words.
Petrologia Greca too.
Yes. Now, do you know what that is?
I know that. Yes, I do know. It's like one of the biggest books that contains all the patristic quotes
Yes, and a
of
lot of it
what
is
church fathers
a lot
say.
of it's untranslated, but we translated this. I actually found this online. Somebody had done the work already. They went and they
We're
translated
trying to get access to a Patrologia Greca as
it.
well.
Here's all the
Um,
Greek, and then here's the English right here.
yeah.
So yeah, anybody can verify. I put the link right there in case anybody wants to verify that these are real quotes. You can use ChatGPT to translate it. ChatGPT does an amazing job of translating. Here's Ambrosiaster. He says, the honor and dignity of the man are said to prevent him from covering his head, for it is inappropriate for the image of God to be concealed. Do you hear how they're talking about hiding things? Indeed, it should not be hidden, for the glory of God is seen in the man. So he's saying one of them is seen, the other one is not seen. He says, so that the invisible God might have the image of one visible man on the earth. Therefore, the woman ought to cover her head because she is not the image of God. What is he saying? He's saying the woman is not visible. She's supposed to be invisible, at least in public. At home, she doesn't have to veil. But in public, she says, the man is my head. I veil myself. Here's Rufinus, very popular church father and historian, wrote a whole book called Church History. It's very huge, like Eusebius's. He says he's talking about these women, these Christian mother and her two daughters who'd been captured, and they were about to be raped by these Romans. And the mother says, are these limbs then, which the common air itself has hardly known, to be prostituted in the common brothels? So she says their limbs have hardly, the common air has hardly known their limbs. That means they're always hidden from the air. And then here's a separate story that Rufinus talks about. He says, at that time, he saw some common woman come bursting out of her house with such haste and speed that she paused neither to close the door nor to cover herself properly, as women should. So this has nothing to do with prayer. Have you heard any of them say anything about putting this thing on at prayer?
No, it doesn't seem like it's just
Or,
prayer.
or covering the hair? None of them think the hair needs to be covered. That is a later invention. It is a total distraction. Your hair doesn't need to be covered. Your hair is a veil, according to Paul. He says the hair is a natural veil that God, he says, does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it's a disgrace to him? But if a woman has long hair, it's a glory to her, for her long hair is given to her for a covering. That's what Paul says. Her long hair is given to her for a covering. It's a natural veil, where if she doesn't have an artificial veil, then she just lets her long hair down. She lets it cover her whole hair, including the face, or her whole head, including the face. Here's Jerome. This is again another letter. He gives advice to all these women all the time. A lot of Jerome's letters are to women, telling them how they should act. He says, you should choose for your companions staid and serious women. Staid just means respectable. Particularly widows and virgins, persons of approved conversation, of few words, and of a holy modesty, who veils all of her face except her eyes, and only uses these to find her way. Again, in another book to a woman named Eustochium, she talks about keeping herself indoors and her daughter indoors. He's saying you don't go let her wandering around outside. And he uses the Old Testament as an example. He says, go not from home, nor visit the daughters of a strange land. Jesus is jealous. He does not choose that your face should be seen of others. And then he talks about veiling. He says, some women go about with heads uncovered in defiance of the apostles' command. And what's his definition of a head covering? It is a face veil, who veils all of her face except her eyes. Augustine is very serious. They all do. He says a man ought not to veil his head, for so much as he is the image and glory of God. Now, if it is true of a man that he is not to veil his head, then the opposite is true of a woman, that she is to veil her head. And in a separate book, he says, like a veiled woman. What else can being veiled mean but, so to say, hidden and unknown? So if she's veiled, you can't even recognize her. She's totally covered up. Cyril of Alexandria, same thing. So this is a universal teaching in the church. But not only is it a universal teaching in the church, it's a universal teaching among the Jews. The Jews also taught it. I have lots of quotes from the Jews on this subject. Mr. T, Josephus, and Philo. But here's one of the craziest parts. Not only did all the Christians and all the Jews believe this, but all of the Greeks and Romans veiled the faces of their women. Do you want me to prove this to you? Is that shocking to you? Can you believe it? Is it too much to believe such a thing?
Probably not, no.
Let me show you just a few quotes. Guy asks, what denomination am I? Well, I'm pending joining any church. I'll join any church that I find that matches the early church. I'll join any church. If you know a church that has all the doctrines of the early church, I will join it so fast. You won't be able to stop me. Okay, check this out, Mr. T. I don't know how much time you have, but here are witnesses from the Greeks and the Romans talking about how this was a law in the land, that a man could divorce his wife if he ever caught her going out unveiled. That was like an instant divorce. But here's Dio Chrysostom, a Greek
That
philosopher.
doesn't actually shock me because if I'm not mistaken, there are such laws like that. I remember in Russia, I'm not sh- in Russia in the 1500s. If you even cut your beard, you don't get a funeral.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you're a clergy, if you're a clergy, you cut your beard, you don't
No
get a
surprise.
funeral.
Guys, that's not even strict. The world was a different place. The way we react when we hear about people doing transgender surgeries is how they reacted when they saw a man shaving his beard or a woman cutting all of her hair off and exposing her whole body. They just say, "Oh, this is abominable." That's what God means when he says, if a woman wears a man's clothing, or a man wears a woman's clothing, that's an abomination. Why is that? Well, that's homosexuality. It's almost homosexuality. When a man covers up his whole body, or if he veils his face like a woman, that's female attire. That's the main defining characteristic of female attire, is that it covers the body and the face completely. Whereas a man, he actually does not go around like that. He actually shows his body. He wears a short tunic. He doesn't go around with his whole body covered in long robes, a long dress, and he certainly doesn't wear a covering over his face. But wearing something on the top of his head is fine. That is not a veil. No church father thinks putting a hat on your head is a veil. Nobody. That's a new idea. But listen to Dio, very famous. I mean, anybody can look up who these people are, like Dio Chrysostom. This is not John Chrysostom. This is a Greek. Chrysostom was a popular title they would attach to very great orators. So he was an orator and a writer. He lived in the 1st century AD. So he's alive between 40 AD and 120. Yes. Orator, writer, and philosopher, and historian of the Roman Empire. So let's see what Dio Chrysostom says. So he's talking about the city of Tarsus, which is actually the city where Paul is from. So don't forget that as well. You know, this is what Paul is used to seeing growing up. But he's talking about how in Tarsus, the city has a lot of problems and people's morals are really slipping. But then he says, but one good thing about their morals is they have remembered some traditions that have been in place for a long time. He says, and yet many of the customs still in force reveal in one way or another the sobriety and severity of deportment of those earlier days. Among these is the convention regarding feminine attire, a convention which prescribes that women should be so arrayed and should so deport themselves when in the street that nobody could see any part of them, neither of the face nor of the rest of the body, and that they themselves might not see anything off the road. But he says, but they hear all this, wickedness as they're walking down the street. And he says, therefore, while they have their faces covered as they walk, they have their soul uncovered and its doors thrown wide open because they hear, wicked speech on the street. So anyway, face covering, guys, face covering. He's saying that's the custom of the city. Let's hear somebody else. Here's Valerius Maximus. This is a Roman historian and orator. He says, he's another historian talking about some memorable things that happened in history. He says, terrible also was the matrimonial frown, so he's just saying something related to marriage, of Sulpicius Gallus, who divorced his wife because he understood that she went abroad with her head unveiled, a rigid sentence, and yet there was some reason for it. For the law, says he, confines you to have no other judges of your beauty but my eyes. You guys see how it's all about beauty being hidden? The law confines you to have no other judges of your beauty but my eyes, for these adorn yourself. Be fair
I
only to
find it
these.
very interesting because basically, you know, with like modern culture today, it's like, hey, I'm going out to hang out with my girlfriends and party and stuff.
And you look
And you're
ridiculous.
just
Makeup, jewelry, crazy hair.
and it's like because like these men they just let these women just go out on their own.
Yes.
Hey, I'm going shopping. Let me wear all this expensive attire and all this makeup. And
You guys understand
everyone gets to look at me
exactly.
while you're just sitting at home or going at work.
Or they have guy friends and they talk about having guy best friends. Like, oh, you know, my best friend, this guy. Like, what? My wife has a best friend who's a man? Or they have something called work husbands. Have you heard about this in America? Women talk about their best friend at work and they call him my work husband.
Yes, no, I've heard that. That's actually pretty insane.
Who could ever deny that the morals of this world have drastically dropped, especially in the last 150 years? Because 150 years ago, all women wore dresses. There were no women walking around in jeans. And now you almost can't find any women in dresses now. And when they do wear a dress, like these so-called conservative women, they're just doing it for show. They're like, oh, I'm going to show up to church with a dress because it's church, but I wouldn't do that normally. And then it's a dress that's above the knee. You can see the whole leg as she's walking around. The early church would have said, you are naked. What are you doing? You are a harlot. You don't show off your legs, your bare legs, in church, in makeup. This is abominable. This is evil, guys. This is why I'm not part of the Orthodox Church. This is no joke. The early church would have nothing to do with the Orthodox Church. If they just saw this one thing, they say this is rampant harlotry. Even the pagans, the
You know,
Romans
it's
have higher
crazy
standards.
though, because there's the whole thing in World Orthodox where they have like the pews and stuff. You know, like they have like the pews and the chairs. You can't. I if I saw pews inside the church, I'm just like walking out of the building
Well, if
as
you're
soon as I see that.
But Mr. T, if you're going to walk out over something like that, don't you think you should be walking out over much worse things? What's worse, having a pew
Yes.
or women dressing like harlots? And then,
Yes, no, I would agree as well. And it gets even worse because you've seen all the footage of like the World Orthodox. There's like one instance where they made like these they brought like gymnastics people inside of a church, and this is on video. You can see like they made these women wear skin tight attire, and they just make them do backflips or do ballet, or I don't know the word, ballerina or whatever it's called, but you get what I mean.
yes, it's
This happens in the World Orthodox churches where they're like doing that stuff where they do like weird like secular dances, or they're like making guys do backflips in the church, you know?
all of that is just so disgusting. I can't even talk about it. This is
It's crazy. There's a compilation. I have like a video compilation on in one of my playlists called the Ecumenism Files, and you'll see like I'll send you the video, dude. Hold on.
well,
It's just
you have to be sober minded about this because this is evil. It's not funny. It's going to result in total destruction when God comes to the earth.
no, this is like the decay of this is like the decay of like, because people think, oh, this is the true church. I must be in the true church, you know. And some people might think, oh, you're just being Donatist, but that's not I'm not trying to judge based on that. My thing is like, if a church is uncanonical, you shouldn't really be going there, you know.
Well, if a church teaches lies and they say it's the truth and they say it's the ancient doctrines of the faith passed down by Christ through the apostles, and I know it's a lie, I know it's a complete
Yeah,
contradiction,
no. If you're like, if I opened a brothel up in a nun monastery, you wouldn't be like, oh, I'm teaching the truth, guys. You know?
I
Oh
can,
yes, my priest just said yes. You must be veiled all the
but he
time.
doesn't know what a veil
It's a
is.
shame that in Orthodox regions and states they do not keep this custom.
But even he doesn't know what a veil is. He doesn't know you're talking about a face veil. He thinks that a woman, if she puts something on the back of her head, that she's veiled. They have it opposite. You couldn't have it more reversed than this. To say, put it on the back of the head.
Here, look at this video. I sent it to
Oh,
you.
please.
I dare you to
I
open
don't
this.
need to see it. It's too disgusting. I don't need to see it.
Okay.
It's wickedness, guys. Even the pagans had a higher moral standard than a lot of Christians do today. In basic practical things like not sending your wife out dressed like a harlot. they would divorce over something like that. Not that divorce is good or permitted. You know, the Orthodox's view of divorcing and remarrying 3 times, that also is wickedness. God hates that. That's adultery. But they allow it. They allow 3 marriages, but they strictly forbid a 4th. Have you ever heard about that?
I've heard that, yeah.
Do you think it's strict to allow 3 marriages and forbid a 4th?
We do know that you are allowed to divorce in very specific
What
scenarios,
about
but
remarrying?
I think if you're like yeah, I think that seems to be a thing. I'd have to look into it. I'm not sure about.
If you found out that all Orthodox churches allow divorce and remarriage, which is adultery according to Christ, would you leave that church or would you continue to go? What do you think?
The Orthodox Church allows 3 marriages, so a second marriage and a third marriage is extremely rare and has to be approved by the bishop under very specific circumstances.
Even one
It's
remarriage
not
is
like I
adultery.
even I'm married right now, so it's not like I can just go divorce my wife a month later. I can go and be like, "Hey, Vladika, I met this girl and I want to marry her. Can I have your blessing?" He's not going to say yes
Well, why are they talking about it if it doesn't happen?
because it's not saying that it doesn't happen. It's grace under human weakness. The
Do you
only
think
acceptable way to get divorced in my synod is if one commits adultery on the other.
but what about remarriage? Does Jesus ever give any permission to remarry, or did the early church for 400 years ever give permission to remarry after divorce? Do you know? If you don't know, you have to study.
I
The
would have to
answer,
look.
yes. It's good that you're honest and you say you don't know. But I'm telling you, I do know because I've studied it. And the church fathers all say that's instant excommunication. If you remarry after you divorced, even if you divorced a sodomite, then you're excommunicated. That is adultery, according to Christ. You've got one shot with your marriage. If your spouse dies, you are allowed to remarry if they're dead. And that is considered an indulgence. But you may not remarry while your spouse is still living. That is forbidden. That is always adultery. And many other things, not the least of which is the bowing to images and saying this is part of Christianity. Bowing to images and burning incense to images. Do you know of any church fathers in the first 400 years of church history who approve or teach the doctrine of honoring God through bowing images to images and burning incense to images? Any church fathers? Because I've looked really hard. I can only find every single church father without exception condemning it. You guys should be able to bring one. And if you can't find one in the first 400 years of church history, then that should make you doubt these people. It should make you reject what they tell you about this doctrine. If you believe in the faith that was once for all handed down, it can't be something that develops slowly. This is the original teaching of the church on veiling. They say that the whole church veiled. Like, listen to what John Chrysostom says. He says the whole world was veiling. He says this, unveiled women are shameless and indecent. Why do you not wear the ornament that is pleasing to him? Modesty, chastity, orderliness, and sober apparel. This is meretricious and disgraceful. We can no longer distinguish harlots and virgins. To such indecency have they advanced. So he considers an unveiled woman to be like a harlot. He says,
So
for
you said
perhaps
you haven't seen any quotes about church fathers from
first
before the
400
year
years.
400 on
Yes.
icons.
Not even one church father teaching the doctrine that we are to bow
Saint
down.
Irenaeus of Lyon said, "The glory of God is a living man, and the life of a man consists in beholding God. For if the earthly image man bears the likeness of the heavenly, then Christians ought to cherish the visible reputations of Christ, who is the image of the invisible God."
I see. Now, is he talking about a living image or a dead image there? Are you
I
a
mean, we're
dead
all
image or are
currently
you a
living
living
that.
image? Are you alive or are you dead? Hello?
Hold on, I'm reading. Give me a second.
I know when it comes to image, image also refers to us because God said, let us make man in our image.
Here's an entire section on church fathers giving quotes about the image of God. Every single church father says the image of God is your soul. The image of God is the living, rational part of you. No physical object is the image of God. So if you have a quote saying we ought to honor the image of God, do you think God is talking about honoring people or dead things that are not made in his image? Was any object, like a painting, was that ever made in the image of God? Is there any Bible verse or any church father saying that dead objects are made in the image of God?
See another quote from Saint Origen, who lived 180
Wait a
to
second. Wait a second.
245
Wait a
AD.
second. Can I ask you something? Now, the Irenaeus quote, you got this from a website, an Orthodox website, trying to push icon veneration, right?
I mean, I didn't get it from an Orthodox website. I just looked up the specific question.
Wait, you just had that sitting in front of you already? Where'd you get the quote?
No, I said I looked up the specific question.
Okay, I see. Now, do you think that that quote
Are there
from
any church fathers,
uh,
from 180 to 480 that were for the use of icons?
yes, and so you got it from some website, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. I'm not bashing you for going on a website. I have a website with lots of quotes. So there's nothing wrong with going to a website for quotes. But I just want to establish something with you. If you bring up a quote, or if somebody else does, and they say, this is proof of what we're teaching, and then it turns out it's not proof, then you should instantly say, that is dishonest. That's deceptive. Why would they rely on fake quotes that actually refute what they're saying if they have quotes to prove it? I don't need fake quotes to prove the things I believe, guys. I don't need quotes taken out of context. I have the universal teaching of the church on every subject that I believe something about. So are you conceding, just real quick here, I'm not attacking you, by the way. I'm not attacking you. I just want you to be consistent. Are you saying the Irenaeus quote is not a good quote? It does not teach icon veneration.
I've never said that. Why?
Okay, you do think so then? You think it does teach icon veneration? You have to
Yeah.
choose one. Okay, so
Yeah,
in this
I've
quote,
already said yes.
okay, so you believe then that it is talking about venerating living images or what? Dead images or living images? What is he saying that we honor?
I mean, he was specifically talking about in that quote Christ, who has been dead and risen at that point, so it would be a living image.
Living. It's not something dead.
Christ is not dead.
There's no mention of a painting in this quote, is there?
No, but in this next quote I'm about to read, there is.
Okay.
What do you mean by dead image, first of all? Do you mean
Something
like
that's
a
not alive,
material?
exactly a material image, like a block of wood or stone or something. So we can move on
Right.
to the next one. So now wait a second. I just want to ask you something real quick. Are you aware that Origen is one of the most hated people, not by me, not by any early church father or anybody like that, but they consider his quotes against images to be so explicit, they hate him, especially for what he says about images. So are you aware of that before you post this quote? Because I'm going to show you some things Origen says, and you're going to say, oh my goodness, Origen really says that against any kind of image veneration? So I'm just shocked. I'm absolutely blown away that anybody would say Origen. But I just want you to be aware of that. If you're not, go ahead and post this quote. Please do post it in the chat here so we can actually read it. You just
Oh,
copying and
I'm currently
pasting?
copying
Take
and
your time. Take
pasting.
your time.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, by the way. That's why it's taking me a bit longer.
Take your time. Take your time. But any Orthodox or Catholic has reached a new state of desperation to go to Origen, who they all universally hate. So, I mean, that is just unbelievable to me. My jaw is on the floor hearing that
I
somebody.
mean, you're saying Catholic and Orthodox as if I'm authoritative. I'm not authoritative. I'm just a lay person. I mean, I'm not representing all of the Orthodox Church in this. I'm just
Well,
doing a quote from the church father.
yes, but by the way,
And my quote and my opinion on him could be wrong from the church's standpoint. I'm not an authoritative figure. I don't speak on the church or for the church.
Well, are you getting the quote from an Orthodox website?
No,
Don't you think there should be Orthodox websites giving quotes from the church fathers? Like, I know of Orthodox websites that give quotes. Do you know of any? I don't understand why you're using these and then saying, but they're all terrible quotes. You should know of some quotes from the church fathers.
I've never said they're all terrible quotes. I don't know where you're getting that from.
But it sounds like if you're going to bring a quote and then I'm going to say, is this from an Orthodox church? And you're going to say, oh, no, this isn't from an Orthodox. This doesn't necessarily represent the Orthodox. I want you to find what the Orthodox say about it.
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. You were asking me why I would pick Origin, and I'm saying I'm not speaking with authority from the church or being a representative from the church. This is my personal opinion that I'm pulling this quote. So I'm not saying that the Orthodox opinion on this is invalid or isn't good enough. I'm just showing my own personal opinion, which I then clarified and said does not represent the church.
I see, but I want you to be philosophic here and just realize this fact that if the church has a doctrine that's delivered from this current church, if they have a doctrine that's delivered from apostolic succession, they should be able to trace it and show that many, many, many church fathers teach it from the 1st century, the 2nd century, the 3rd century, the 4th century. They should be able to do that. They shouldn't be dropping duds from church fathers who actually refute what they say. That should never, ever happen. That's all I'm telling you. But I'll wait for this quote from Origen, which I'm still, I can't believe that you found any website, Catholic or Orthodox, that was going to use Origen. Here's our list of quotes from Origen, but I'll wait for you first.
I posted it.
Oh, you did?
Interesting that it's interesting that you say like you believe the image of to be talking about the human soul. That's your position, right?
That's the entire United Testimony of the Church. You can click on this this link here, image of God. I'll post it here. You can see every church father says the image of God is the soul. So if something's dead, that's not the image of God. Okay, what's Origen says? He says the image of God is found in the Son, who's the firstborn of all creation, and visible representations can be useful to lift the mind towards spiritual realities. What? Let's go to Contra Against Celsus, Book 7, Chapter 62. Book 7, Chapter 62. Why are they quoting Origen? This is incredible. Oh my goodness. You got to be kidding me. This is some ChatGPT nonsense. Guys, this is the chapter I was going to quote to you. This chapter says Christians do not have any images. I cannot believe this, guys. This is unbelievable. Did you get this from ChatGPT? Please just be honest with me.
No.
Okay, let's read this quote because you just saved me the trouble. I don't even have to quote Origen with my own quotes. You just went to my quote out of many of Origen saying Christians do not have any. So this is a book Origen wrote against a pagan named Celsus. Celsus criticizes Christians and says that Christians are really not religious because if they were religious, then they would have temples and images and altars where they burn incense. So Origen quotes Celsus in his book that he wrote against the Christians. Celsus named this book A True Word, so it's kind of silly. Okay, Origen says, let us now see what Celsus says next. Celsus says, let us pass on to another point. They, the Christians, cannot tolerate temples, altars, or images. In this, they are like the Scythians, the nomadic tribe of Libya, the Syrians who worship no god, and some others of the most barbarous and impious nations of the world. So Celsus is saying, we Christians are like barbarians because we don't have what? What are these three things Christians don't have? You guys see? Temples, altars, or images. He's saying Christians don't have that. He's saying Christians are well known. Now let's see if Origen denies this. He continues down here, the Persians hold the same notions, which is shown by Herodotus in these words. I know that among the Persians it's considered unlawful to erect images, altars, or temples, but they charge those with folly who do so, because, as I conjecture, they do not, like the Greeks, suppose the gods to be of the nature of men. And now this is still Celsus speaking. Heraclitus also says in one place, persons who address prayers to those images act like those who speak to the walls, without knowing who the gods or the heroes are. And what wiser lesson have they to teach us than Heraclitus? He certainly plainly enough implies that it is a foolish thing for a man to offer prayers to images, while he knows not who the gods and heroes are. This is the opinion of Heraclitus. But as for them, he's saying, as for Christians, they go further and despise without exception all images. Are you reading this? Are you still here with me? He says Christians despise without exception all images. Did you read this with me? Are you still here with me? Mr. T, did you hear? Are you reading this with me?
Yes, I'm looking at this.
So is this unbelievable to you that anybody would go to this? Origen is quoting Celsus as accusing Christians as being notorious for despising without exception all images. But let's keep reading. I'm just making sure you guys are still here and I'm not just talking to the air. You guys are here with me? I don't know if the other guy is still here or if he had to go. Because what's the point of me reading this if he's gone? He can leave something in the chat if he's here, but I don't know if he is. Well, I guess he's not here. Do you want me to keep reading, T?
No clue.
Well, if you don't want me to read, I won't. I'll go eat dinner.
All right, man. Yes, I will definitely send your articles to my fellow friend.
I see.
Ask him about.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you for sharing some of the stuff. It was quite interesting, at least to me. So I think it'll be worth looking at it.
Very well. I guess we lost him then. He's not here. Or maybe he just lost the ability to speak. Maybe this quote left him speechless, like I was saying it would. Maybe it absolutely blew his socks off.
Don't mind me, guys. I'm just here to listen. I promise. I'm not a fed.
No, we're already leaving. I've got to go eat dinner. My modest, veiled wife is texting me. Incredible. All right, farewell.